I'm back again with another one of the shop special side stories, bundled with volume 25 of the rezero light novel. If you want more rezero content, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. I have also made a summary for another one of the side stories which can be seen above, so make sure to check that out already if you haven't. Also, if you're new to this part, make sure to check out the previous prequel side stories to this one so you're all caught up and you're not confused. The story starts with a history lesson between Vollachia and Lagunica about how there was always constant hostility between the two nations. A majority of the time Vollachia would be the country initiating the aggression, but of course there were times where Lagunica would start its own conflict with Vollachia. This would continue until Lagunica formed a covenant with the divine dragon Volcanica, resulting in the hostilities to subside. Again, more information on this can be found in the EX4 light novel and in Arc 7 if you haven't read those yet. It turns out that this information was coming from Schult, which he read in the book. Heinkel asks why Schult can believe kiddish fairy tales from a book, and we see that 4 people are travelling by a dragon carriage somewhere. These 4 people are Al, Schult, Heinkel, and Priscilla. Of course, Priscilla isn't really happy with the way Heinkel is talking about Schult. Regardless though, Priscilla asks if Al is comforting himself by sneaking glances at the side of her face. As we know, Al is a certified Priscilla simp, so it's only natural that he's looking at her face. Heinkel and Schult continue to talk. Heinkel is essentially trying to teach Schult some life lessons, and that he shouldn't be naive. After all, if enemies find out that Schult is Priscilla's weakness, then people would take advantage of Schult's nice demeanour to get to Priscilla. Schult was essentially content with being a child, for which Schult responds that he shouldn't be a child. Heinkel actually tells him that kids should be kids, since kids are cute and are even cuter when they have no special powers. Of course, Heinkel is referring to Reinhard here. We see that Heinkel wasn't really attacking Schult. He was acting like a father and trying to impart life lessons onto him. When Al went to attack Heinkel for his words, Priscilla actually defended Heinkel, essentially telling Al to back down. We see that Heinkel chose the path he has taken, even if he was ridiculed or attacked by others. It didn't matter to him, for he did it for one reason, which is of course Luana. Al contemplates this, since he's really shocked when he sees that Heinkel displays some decent behaviour from outside his rough exterior. Either way, the dragon carriage is nearing a river called the Presentiments River, which is a river that goes from Priscilla alongside the border of Kararagi all the way down to Vollachia. It seemed that this path was specifically chosen by Priscilla as to not antagonize the Empire, so she's taking an indirect approach to getting to Vollachia. We see that Al spent 18 years in Vollachia as a gladiator, so again debunking the idea that Al was behind the witch cult attack on Ram and Rem's village. By the way, if you haven't seen that video, this is further evidence against that idea. We then get more information on the Presentiments River and how long it is. The Presentiments River crosses the world map. It starts in the southern part of Gutsiko, then flows south, passing through where the borders of the countries overlap, before then flowing down into the Vollachia Empire. It then goes through the Vollachia Empire, connecting to the Great Waterfall, eventually, which is at the south of the world map. In other words, this western river that originates from Gutsiko flows down the west side of Lagunica and Kararagi and then cuts through Vollachia. By the way, reading this now, maybe in Arc 7 when Subaru jumps into a river, it could potentially be that that river was actually the Presentiments River itself. So that would be really interesting if it was. Priscilla and the gang board a ship at the harbour town. There are sailors who will take the Priscilla camp to Vollachia. Schult gets seasick on the journey whilst Priscilla talks about her knowledge about travelling by ship, and then she goes into a private cabin, leaving the sailors piloting the ship Al, Schult, and Heinkel on the deck. Either way, they arrive at Vollachia. However, as they arrive, they are attacked by pirates. Heinkel draws his sword as the situation worsens. Turns out there are 20 or so pirates, and Al dissuades Heinkel from fighting. The idea is that with so many enemies, it would be hard to get away without being hurt, and on top of that, Schult is here, so they would have to protect him also whilst fighting 20 pirates. Heinkel listens to Al and no longer has the will to fight the pirates. But what's interesting is the narration seems to imply that Heinkel did it due to the presence of Schult. We don't know if it was Schult himself, or due to the fact that Heinkel likes children, or if he was projecting someone through Schult, so Reinhard in that case. But it goes to show that Heinkel does seem to care about people. The sailors were tied up and crammed into a small boat, and the pirates locate Priscilla, who was in her private cabin. The leader of the pirates grabbed Priscilla by her chin. Of course, as you can imagine, Priscilla was about to become hostile, but something else happened. She narrowed her eyes and whispered something into the pirate leader's ear. The pirate boss muttered, "It's as they said," and he ordered his men to kick off the sailors. As stated before, the sailors which will help guiding the ship to Vollachia were tied up, put onto a separate boat, and then flung into the Presentiments River. So now we just have the pirate leader, the pirates, Priscilla, Al, Schult, and Heinkel on the giant boat. The pirate leader tells the sailors which are tied up that everyone is going to be used for ransom. So the Priscilla camp and the boat will be used for ransom money. After some time passed and all of the sailors were gone long way down the Presentiments River, the pirates all kneeled down before Priscilla. Priscilla thanked them for their welcome, and Priscilla confirms that these pirates are actually one of the private armies of a Wallachian noble. Heinkel already figured out what's happening, he's quick on the uptake. Priscilla realizes that the Wallachian noble behind this is someone called Selena Drakroy. Priscilla knows her since when she was married to a previous husband, they met and thus formed a relationship there, and they knew each other well. These pirates obey Selena's and Priscilla's commands. Priscilla then confirms that her arrival won't just be a homecoming, it will be much more. With this group set up, they sail downstream into the Wallachian Empire, with the beginning of the unrest dawning. That's the end of the side story. As we can see, the civil unrest in Vollachia might be actually due to Priscilla's arrival. In Arc 7, there is a mention of a rebellion and Vincent was ousted from the throne, so it could all be due to Priscilla's arrival, which means that Subaru and Vincent will be against Priscilla and Aldebaran during this arc, which would be interesting to see. Thank you to my channel members for supporting my videos.